You're all set.
Okay. Uh, Good evening. This is the December 7th, 2023 meeting of the Economic and Community Development meeting. I am your host, Josh Goldstein, and calling this meeting to order. Instead of having everyone say their name, here is Jim Freyer, Lisa Shanahan, Barbara Smith, Jalen Seed, and Heather Dunn. That is certainly a quorum. And I'll let Darlene know, and I'm sure she'll be here shortly. Is there anyone here for public participation?
There is one person in the attendee list. Nicole, if you'd like to speak, if you just want to raise your hand, if you're just here to listen, feel free to just do nothing. I think we're all set, Josh.
Okay. Then the first thing on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the November 2nd, 2023 meeting. Any motion? Barbara. Any corrections? Any issues here? Seeing that there are none, all in favor? Well, hold on a minute. I know I have to abstain. Jalen and
I have to abstain.
I have to as well.
Oh, well then everyone has to abstain except Barbara.
And Jim, weren't you in the last meeting?
I thought I was in the last meeting, but
Yeah.
I'm not listed on that.
Okay, then that's,
You were.
And I think I was going to
I
bring
think
that
you
up.
were there. You were there.
Did you?
okay,
I called in.
I remember.
okay.
Yeah, I remember that.
Jim,
All
I
right,
believe
so
last meeting, but it might have been the meeting before that you were unable to make.
this is the November 2nd meeting.
Right.
So,
This
I
is
believe-
when
Yeah.
we were all someplace else.
You had
Oh,
an
yeah,
event.
correct.
Yeah, you
That's
had an
correct.
event and called in from the parking lot. I remember, Jim. Yeah.
Good memory.
That's 2 in favor.
Okay, so I'll be in favor too.
okay. All right, so let's see. I mean, I see from the attendance, I mean, John Kites, Brian Meek, neither of whom are on the council anymore, Barbara, Jim, and Darlene. I don't think we can approve minutes until Darlene's here, right? I mean, we would need technically a majority to approve minutes. Or am I totally wrong about that?
I think that it should be just the majority of the people that's here. And since we have to abstain, I don't think that counts as a no vote.
Right.
Okay, then,
Yeah, I mean, I
Great.
think we're only going to be able to have 3.
yeah, I mean, it's only 3 max. I mean,
Possible.
I'm just looking at the, so all in favor, raise your hands. So that's 2 in favor. And then obviously any abstentions. That's 3. And no one opposed. So and by the way, that's for the minutes as amended. Let's make sure Jim's name is on the attendance list. Okay, then I'd like to move on to new business, but before we do, I just want to say that I'm really honored to be chairing this committee, and I'm really looking forward to working with you in that capacity. But I want to start at new business with transportation, mobility, and parking. And so this is item 1, authorize. I'm sorry. Oh, oops. This is item 1, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an agreement between the city of Norwalk and the Connecticut Department of Transportation to receive $800,000 in 2023 Community Connectivity Grant construction funding related to the Hospital Hill Village safety enhancements. Do I have a motion? Lisa. Garrett, take it away.
Good evening, everyone. And I just wanted to extend a warm welcome to all the new council members on this committee, as well as welcome back some of the familiar faces. As Commissioner Goldstein mentioned, This is to accept a grant from the state in the order of $800,000 for Hospital Hill improvements. So these are improvements at the intersection of Stewart's Avenue, Stevens Street, Magnolia Ave, and Phillip Street. So if you're familiar with it, it's a traffic circle. It's very problematic. The project really normalizes the intersection, tees up the intersection. It has a number of other enhancements to support the local businesses, including streetscape improvements and the addition of a community parking lot. We were really excited about this application. It was actually one of the highest ranked applications submitted to CONDOT, and it was one of 17 that was chosen to be awarded funding. And we were one of the few cities to actually get the full funding amount, which is that $800,000. I personally have worked on 2 other community connectivity projects, so really excited to work on this third one. The city of Norwalk's actually just wrapping up bike lanes, which are the longest on any state route in Connecticut. And we're looking to do a press release on that next week as well. But we met with the community to develop this concept and had a lot of input from the stakeholders. It's been a concept that's been kicking around since 2006. There was a neighborhood study. Improvements to this village area were included in the POCD and also the transportation master plan. So we're really excited to bring this to reality. We are looking at a very ambitious schedule and looking to be the first city with shovels in the ground this summer. And the project timeline, we're already out to bid for design services. And we're also looking at holding a community meeting in this January. So we respectfully ask that you approve this, the acceptance of this grant before you tonight.
Anyone got any questions? Barbara?
No questions, just a few comments. You know, that intersection has been pretty dangerous for pedestrians forever, and I'm just thrilled that this is moving forward. But also, I would like to commend you, Garrett and Jim, and the whole team for the work you do around grants. I mean, you have worked so hard and brought in so many grants that are improving, you know, walkability, bikeability, safety for pedestrians. So it's extraordinary, the amount of grants you have brought into the city. So I just want to thank you for that work.
Thank you.
Absolutely, you know, double that comment. It's so impressive.
Jalen?
Yeah, I just want to just thank you guys for the work that you've done. I actually grew up in that area right on Woodbury. My mom, she still lives there. And I know from Mrs. Helen's store on the corner to Blue Cactus, they're really excited about this project, and also on the neighbors over there on Magnolia. It's definitely hasn't been safe for pedestrians or cars. I think that I saw in the poster that there's frequent accidents there. And definitely just walking to the store or walking, door knocking, definitely wasn't safe. So excited for what you guys are doing there. And as for my mom, I just want to say thank you for because we frequent the area a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, and by the way, Garrett was being modest. It wasn't a highest rated. I'm pretty sure it was the highest rated application.
It was the highest.
Yeah, there we go.
You're correct.
Anything else, Jim, Heather?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump on the bandwagon here. I think the most important thing is that we're getting all this done for free. This is huge. I mean, this has a, you know, there's nothing more of a payback that you get than free. So the tremendous job that you guys do, and I'm just amazed that you get the money that you do. But don't stop.
We'll keep working.
Okay. And by the way, I just want to recognize Darlene Young joined the meeting, I think about 5-6 minutes ago. So let's say like 7:05 or so. Hi, Darlene. With that, all in favor?
All right.
That's unanimous. All right, Garrett.
Thank you.
Okay. Have a good night, Garrett, unless you want to stick around. I don't think there's anything else from TMP on the agenda today.
I will have to leave. I have 2 kids to put to bed. But thank you.
All right, take care. I'll see you in the morning. Okay, this is 2B, Business Development and Tourism. Authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute a contract with Rough Edge Collective, Inc. for the completion of the Monroe Street Underpass mural in an amount not to exceed $50,000. Account numbers noted. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Jim? Sabrina, the
Yes.
floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. So a few of you might have seen these designs, I would say almost a year and a half ago now. The state was undergoing a process to update their approval process for artwork on their property. And as you know, that's in your package. This is on the Monroe Street underpass, which is actually under the train bridge, which kind of goes into South Norwalk onto Monroe Street, over near the new development over there, but also near the police station. We put out a call for artists a year and a half ago. We got a lot of responses, great responses from artists from all over the world, which is always really exciting for us. We weeded those down to about 3. And then the Arts Commission at the time, now the Arts and Cultural Commission, they voted to accept MJ and Josh Linda Lawyer, which are the artists that make up this collective that we would be entering the contract with. Essentially, the costs include getting the equipment for them, transportation for them, they're from California, and installing all of the artwork. We are in the process of waiting for a response from the state for our application itself to be approved. We've heard good news about the easement that we've asked to be able to install this artwork. The only thing we've got questions on from them is actually being able to install artwork on the train trestle itself. They're not very comfortable with that, but that's an additional part of the project we asked for because we think it would look really cool. But if we have to nix that part of the project, we will, and just keep the large girl and the large boy, essentially the larger in life than life kind of caricatures that they've created, and install those on both sides of the walls, and then also on the abutments on kind of the outside street facing sides of the underpass as well.
Any questions? Heather?
Go ahead, Ms. Dunn.
What's the community engagement piece of it? Is there an aspect of that?
Yes. So every time that we install a mural, we like to do a cleanup in the nearby area that involves members of the community. But also when we have artists, especially artists that are international from other parts of just other parts of the United States that aren't from Connecticut or aren't homegrown local, we like to do what we call Art Speaks. So they do kind of a presentation series of their thoughts behind the artwork, what it's going to look like, how it's going to get installed, and how the community can be involved in installing the artwork. Our last few pieces that we did, we kind of did the same exact thing with our MLK murals, including the ones on the stairs, where not only the community did the cleanup and met the artists and came out to do kind of the talking piece of everything, they also came to help install it with the artists, which was really exciting. So this same kind of process is going to follow through all of our pieces, so that it's not just us slapping up a random mural on a wall.
There's in the contract, there's a piece of that kind of educational component to it.
Yeah, so every invoice component that they send to us has that included in it. So that's included in their budget as well.
And about how many hours, or what's the scope of that?
It depends. Usually the art speak and the cleanup will be about an hour and a half, 2 hours, depending on kind of the size of the area. The actual art speak is usually an hour itself. And then the actual installation, it really just depends how long it takes, weather depending, that kind of thing. But they think they're going to be done over the course of a week. So they might need different volunteers at different times.
Barbara?
Yeah, so both of these designs are going to be used?
Yes. So one's for one side of the bridge, the other side is for the other side.
Okay, they're beautiful.
Yeah, they look amazing, and
Yeah.
they're really larger than life, which I think is really
Yeah.
awesome and cool.
Yeah, really beautiful.
Jalen?
Yeah, so I just had a question because I like the design and everything, and sorry if I'm coming late to the game, but I was just wondering if there was a reason why we went with like we didn't go with like local artists. I just know like the community usually asks that. So I don't know if that was a discussion prior, but just wondering if there's a reason why we went with someone from outside of Norwalk.
So we did a call for artists and none of them responded. So we do the call for artists to essentially mimic the procurement process that we do for other things. So we would do like an RFP for a plan document. We do the call for artists and post it up, and we do share it to our local networks, and people either apply or they don't. The last time we had someone not from Norwalk, but hyper local enough for us. She was from Stamford, originally from Norwalk, and was in the MLK neighborhood, so it made a lot of sense for us. We definitely prioritize those artists, but when they don't apply, that's kind of where that ends.
Okay, and again, it looks great, but just wants to ask that.
Yeah, of course. We love to kind of put the Norwalk artists at the top of the list all the time and use that in our decision making, but unfortunately, just none of them applied for this specifically.
Any other questions, comments on this item? Okay, seeing none. All in favor? Opposed? 2 opposed. Darlene and Heather. I think that covers everybody. Okay, the item is passed. Okay, so that sort of ends the vote-taking part of the evening, but I want to, as a way to sort of start things off for new members and as we're new term, wanted each department to give sort of a brief but comprehensive update of various projects that are going on right now, and to keep everyone up to date. So we'll stick with the agenda. So Sabrina, if you could give any updates for business development and tourism.
Sure. So I'll go not quite quickly, but I'll try to run the gamut of everything that my department has been doing and what we plan to do over the next few months. So my department not only is tasked with drawing business and supporting small businesses that are already existing here in our city, it's also tasked with driving traffic to Norwalk in ways of visitors or tourism and those kind of things, not only for people outside of Norwalk, but also curating and helping with events that are for Norwalk residents as well. The department also oversees the Arts Commission, the Arts and Cultural Commission as staff. So a lot of those art projects that will come through to you guys from the commission will come through the Business Development and Tourism Office, as you've seen one of them tonight. So I'll start with the 3 kind of larger programs that we've been executing in my department. So the first one is the Storefront Improvement Program, and it's a matching grant program, 80%, 20% match. So we pay the 80, they pay the 20 as the business owner, and it really helps businesses to get off their feet to buy signage, improve their storefronts if they've been there for a while and they've come to disarray. But it could also pay for things like planters, benches, and seating outside, so that it not only improves the owner's storefront, but maybe improves the streetscape as well. We've expended kind of all of the funds we've been awarded for that program to this point. It's gotten very popular. Originally, when we released it, it was a 50-50 match. It wasn't as popular. And now the 80-20 match, we've gotten, an outstanding amount of applications. So we're really excited to see those improvements. A lot of them have been done in our downtown areas, both in Wall Street, West Avenue, and South Norwalk, but we've also seen some kind of on Westport Ave and other neighborhoods of the city. So it's not targeted into one area, which is really, really great. We also have the Kiva program, which the council approved a year ago almost now. I think just over a year actually, and it's a 0% microloan program. It works like a GoFundMe. The maximum amount is $15,000 that we can give to a business owner. Essentially, they put up their campaign, they raise the funds. Once those funds are raised, it gets executed to the business in a PayPal account where they can spend those funds however much they were approved for, essentially through the Kiva hub. So we do not do, as the municipality, any of the underwriting or anything like that. It's all on a separate vendor. What happens then is that once they expend the funds, they pay those funds back, and it builds their business credit, which is really great for businesses just starting out, especially if they have no credit or no business at all that they've ever had before. So the thought is you pay back your loan, and then you'll hopefully be able to get a larger loan from a more traditional lender to kind of grow your business as you're just getting started. The last program that we've had available recently is the Norwalk Innovation Initiative. A lot of the previous council members did attend the event where we awarded the funds. We had $185,000 to award this year. It was a mix of capital and ARPA funds. Next year, we are hoping to get approved for capital funds for this program. So essentially how it works is, if you've seen the show Shark Tank, it functions the same way. So our participants have to participate in some sort of educational aspect. So we know that they have a business plan that's in place, a pitch deck that's in place, and that they're ready to execute that plan if they were to get funding, so that we know what they would be using the funding for. If they get through the application phase, and it's not a very rigorous application. It essentially says, are you up to date on your taxes? Have you received any other funds from us in the past? So we can kind of prioritize people at the outset. They then work with us to learn about their business plan, see what they need to tweak, and then they also pitch to us and a sea of sharks, essentially. We had a variety of people. We like to mix up kind of our judges so that they're more industry specific for the people that are presenting. So maybe they can help them more on an educational basis as well, and a mentorship experience. We then, from that, award the funds. We never set a set grant amount for anyone. If there's somebody who really impresses us, we'll give them a little bit more money. For example, if they're going into a downtown location, if they're already in a downtown location and they're expanding and they are going to hire a lot of local employees, we'll prioritize them on our list and we award those funds that way. So those are kind of the three programs that the department has been executing for businesses specifically. We run all of those out of the Business Development Center, which is next to the library. It's open for appointments. People can come in, learn about things, get help for anything that they need. And we've had that open now for just over a year as well. So we launched Kiva kind of the same week as we launched the Business Development Center. So we also help with permitting and licensing, walking you through that process, both at the state and local level, which has really been helpful for folks just starting out as well, kind of a one-stop shop. Additionally, we do kind of all of the events that you've seen recently. So we did the Halloween event, the two holiday events, the one in South Norwalk and the one in Wall Street. We appreciate, all the folks that were getting out for those. We're just starting out. We hired a special events coordinator this year. The first event of Halloween, the 2-day event, unfortunately, the second day it rained, but the first day we saw about 4,000 to 5,000 people, which is really exciting for our businesses. Our businesses have been raving about how great it was for them. So that's kind of the importance of that, not only to have something great for our residents, but to support our local businesses as well. We had the holiday events, which we copied the Parking Authority. They were holding the reins last year, so we took that over this year. We had probably about 2,000 people in South Norwalk and about 1,000 people in Wall Street. And again, those ones bring businesses out actually to participate, which is really great, and also have some fallout after the fact to support our businesses. And we're hoping to have a full slate of events for 2024. We're hoping to have one kind of larger event in the spring, one larger event in the summer, and then the fall and the winter, which would be the holiday and the winter events that we've already had. So we're really excited to provide those for folks. But those are my two hats, and that's kind of what we're working on now. We have some projects coming up in the pipeline that you'll obviously be aware of as we kind of grow and think about new things that we want to do in the city to make it better and make it great, and support kind of our initiatives, which are supporting businesses, drawing businesses here, and also drawing people and supporting our residents. On the Arts Commission side, I'll just go really quickly. We have the Monroe Street murals, which was the one you just saw. We will have the Ely Avenue fence coming up, which is a community-driven project, which will be kind of a landscape along the fencing on Ely Avenue, where we're going to distribute pieces of the mural to the schools and community centers so that students can actually paint on them and do them themselves. And then we're going to have an artist install them artistically on a larger landscape that's going to go on the fence. So that's really exciting. And then we also are starting to tackle the West Avenue wall, where the vines currently are. We have a couple proposals in, and we're kind of tweaking the design. So once the Arts Commission kind of goes through the design process with the artist, that's kind of when it will come to you guys to see what it all looks like and how the process will work. So that's about all we have in the Business Development and Tourism Department and with the Arts Commission. And I will stop talking. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, happy to meet, happy to do anything that you guys need to help you guys out as you're getting your feet.
Just want to say, just quickly jump in to say that these last two big events, the right after Thanksgiving event and the Wall Street Wonderland were like massive hits. And you guys did a great job. And Anna Brialt, your special events coordinator, who I know has presented to this committee and others before, and I'm sure she'll be back.
Yes.
You guys, she really hit the ground running, and you guys have done a really wonderful job. And if you haven't been to the Business Development Center, check it out and meet Pedro, because he's the man. Anyone have any questions?
One quick question on the Innovation Fund. How often do you have these presentations?
So we just started it and we just had our first one. Our goal is to have one every quarter. It just depends on the amount of funding we have available. So we closed out the year, but we're doing a second phase. The applications are actually up right now. And they will be closing in February, and then we'll do the Shark Tank activity around March, where the end of March, early April, we'll do the actual awarding of the funds. But our hope is when we have, our solidified money pool, when it comes to kind of budget season, we'll be able to break down those funds to 4 times a year to be able to do it more frequently than we do now, which is just the once a year.
Okay. And how much money do you expect that to be giving away?
So we have requested in the capital budget this year, which you guys will see soon enough, $250,000 to break down over the 4 different phases of the program. We started with that same amount. So we have the 185, which we awarded, and then the remainder of that 250 is going to be the other second phase of this year's funding pot.
Okay, good. Thanks. That's
Yeah.
a great idea.
Okay. Any other questions before we move on to redevelopment? Okay, so redevelopment's obviously not a city department; it's its own thing. And but Brian's work in redevelopment is goes part and parcel with a lot of the work that this committee and the departments that make up this the ECD departments do. And so I'm really thankful and grateful that Brian Bedolle, the tallest man in Norwalk, is joining us here tonight. So Brian, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Good evening. And I probably don't appear so tall in the little box, but yeah, I'm 6'8", so I will back that under Josh's statement here. But nonetheless, it's nice to see you all. It's nice to meet you all. As I said, Brian Bedolle, I'm the executive director for the Norwalk Redevelopment Agency. For some of you new members, we are a quasi-public agency. Well, we are very much an agency of the city. We were created back in the 50s, actually as part of a council action. To help with development in towns. We work very closely, obviously, with economic development, everyone at City Hall. I like to think of myself as a member of the family. And we just wanted to provide that.
You
update.
are, Brian.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what I was hoping for. A very distant cousin, I'll take. But no, I just wanted to provide you an update in terms of what we do. I'm definitely going to give a high-level overview of what we do. Our sort of quote-unquote jurisdiction is the urban core. So that's the area around South Norwalk in the Wall West Ave area. And we get involved in some relatively complex real estate transactions and development deals. So there's going to obviously be things that I'm going to be kind of glancing over just in the benefit of brevity for tonight's meeting. But I'll try to hit the highest level projects. And I'm always available, for questions, or if you want to meet separately to go over anything you hear tonight. So the first one, and some of you may have been involved peripherally in the work we've done around the South Norwalk train station. When I first started in this role about 4 years ago now, which is crazy to believe, we picked up a plan around the South Norwalk train station. So we did a comprehensive, about 1.5 year planning study around the train station, trying to work with the community and developers to kind of get a handle on everything that was going on, or the interest that was around development around the train station. One of the things that came out of that is a public-private partnership with Spinnaker Real Estate Partners at 1517 Chestnut, which is the address. It's right there at the corner of Chestnut and Henry Street. There's a lot of documentation on the details of that project. But the long and short of it is the city cut a land disposition agreement to sell 60 of the surface parking spaces right there at the train station and structure those into the garage of the new development, making way for a larger development pad, accommodating 200 mixed use, mixed income units, and unlocking a host of benefits for the area, not just in terms of the actual development, and property tax revenues coming to the city, but grant funding. We actually received a $6 million grant from the state of Connecticut for area infrastructure, as well as, just to mitigate the impacts of the development. And $1 million of that actually went across the street to Columbus Court, which is a existing multifamily condo building for rehab of that structure. And that's actually it's underway right now. We've just finished the roofs, we did the siding. So what we try to do really is balance that economic and community development in both our plans and implementation projects. And this one is kind of one of the big ones we're working on. Some things that you're going to see in the coming months are public meetings regarding the infrastructure plans. There's actually one that's going to occur in December here. I believe it's actually scheduled for next week, or the 18th actually, to talk about the area infrastructure, how we're going to use the remainder of that grant for infrastructure improvements, whether it's roadway, streetscape. And we're also actually actively getting ready to bid the underground utility work on Chestnut Street over there, which was part of this project. So there's a lot of pieces to this. The one other thing that you'll see in the coming months is actually the environmental remediation work. We received a $2 million grant from the state of Connecticut and the Federal Environmental Protection Agency to clean up the brownfield contamination on that site, pre-transfer to the developer. So things are moving well, they're moving fast, and happy to answer any questions, or if you want to have a deeper meeting, I'm happy to do so. Barbara.
Yeah, Brian, I just want to ask you to talk about the community engagement that you have done since you've been here with us, because, I think that you've really done an extraordinary job around that, particularly working with the South Norwalk community. So I think I'd love to hear you talk about that for the new members.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, the planning study that we did, we started it and set out with sort of the typical, okay, we're going to do, a meeting to introduce the project, a meeting to check in, and a meeting to deliver the final report. And we quickly realized that wasn't going to be effective. So what we did is we completely repositioned the outreach strategy. We worked with our consultants to pivot and have basically as many meetings as we felt necessary with the community, with different groups, and establish what we refer to as a community advisory committee for the project. So when we took this general outreach strategy, we split that into the community advisory committee, which represented, local stakeholders, business owners, residents, church leaders, and whoever was interested in participating. It was really an open call to have a discussion and define what could this project do for the, immediate area, not just the overall city of Norwalk. And I think that was hugely beneficial, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because it helped us craft this grant and basically be able to verbalize to the state, here's what the city of Norwalk needs to mitigate the impacts of this development, to make people comfortable with it. So community outreach, to Barbara's point, was really central to that plan. I'm a firm believer. My planning approach is based on not trying to stamp something down in an area. It's just to be a mirror and reflective of what people, are interested in. And I think that was really reflected in this plan. Does that answer your question, Barbara? Sorry.
Yeah, it wasn't a question. I just really wanted you to share that process because you've done such a good job around that.
Yeah, and more to come. Yeah, I think I see a hand. Jalen?
Yeah, I had a question. I think everything it looks really good. But I just wanted to see is there a plan, or how can we work to get really truly affordable housing in these developments? I know what the state calls affordable by the formulas, but a lot of us know that it's not truly affordable, especially for a lot of people in South Norwalk and even in the Wall West area. So how could we incorporate more truly affordable housing in these developments?
Yeah, so from redevelopment perspective, what we try to do is obviously with the grant programs that the state's offering right now, there's a huge push for affordable housing. And actually with the funding that we got, we were able to push that harder. So we were able to drive down the income band that was required for this development from 80% of it was SMI to 50% of AMI, which is going to actually be a deeper level of affordability. So that's one way that we go about it. The other way from a redevelopment perspective that we, try to, make our dent in the affordable housing challenge is through the facade improvement program that we manage. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but it's really resources that the city and now the state through the city and our agency make available to sort of what we're referring to as existing affordable housing to help them with their maintenance and rehabilitation so that we can make sure we preserve that. So I think there's expansion, which is obviously what we're talking about on the new development front. And then there's preservation. And I think that's a big focus of our group and some of the work we're doing. I won't lie and say it's not a huge challenge. You know, it's going to take the work of a lot of different people to tackle, you know, given the scale and scope of what affordable housing is in Fairfield County and Connecticut, actually the nation as a whole. But that's the most direct answer I could give in terms of what redevelopment is doing in that regard.
Thank you. And thank you for everything you're doing.
No problem.
So Brian, could you just explain a little bit more about what's the mechanism for driving down that MAI, is it? And how do we get that lower? Because I always thought that was kind of a state mandated number that we had to adhere to.
Yeah, so the thing what's mandated locally is in the zoning code, and that relates to 10% at 80% SMI typically, unless there's you know, there's different bands, and I won't go into the full detail of that. But in terms of the direct question about what's driving that down is us going out to get grants to basically finance the gap that occurs when a developer provides that affordable housing. So providing that gap financing, which has the requirement of it, that's the state mandate that comes along with the grant. If you're going to receive these funds, in this particular case for remediation, for the environmental remediation, you're required to offer 10% at 50% AMI.
So would that be, that's not for, let's say, HUD subsidized 202 Section 8, things like that?
No,
okay,
that's
so
more housing authority stuff, yeah.
All right, okay, I got it.
Yeah. And I think
now I understand what you're talking about, because you're just adding more money to it. It's almost taking the place that a HUD subsidy might do.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the housing, I mean, it's a multi-level issue where you have like 5 to 25% that usually like housing authority would take care of. And then you have like affordable or workforce that handles like 75 above, but then you have that like 35 to 65% that's like really in the middle, that they don't qualify for other assistances. And they make just enough not to make it. So that's where that's where they kind of need the help. And again, it's not a simple problem to solve, but I am happy that we're at least trying to chip away at it.
Yeah, and the city's affordable housing plan and the work we're working with the city in terms of the housing forum to kind of quantify that need a little bit directly will help in that regard and help us have these discussions that need to occur.
Right.
All right. So if and again, happy to answer any questions subsequent to the meeting, but if everyone's comfortable, I can move on to the next project. Or Darlene?
Can I, sorry.
Go ahead, Heather.
So I had a question, just broad view. There's some talk about the electrical going in, up Haviland or Elizabeth Street through the state. Are you coordinating with them? You were just talking about undergrounding other things. What's the time frame? Is there coordination is my question.
That's actually a DPW project. We're not involved with that one specifically.
Okay, so
yeah, I don't have much information on it. I could tell you we are doing work around the train station. They're not Haviland, it's basically Chestnut is what we're working on.
Is it going to be going on at the same time, I guess is my question.
Not that I'm aware of, but we're working very closely with DPW. We'll make sure, the traffic and management plan doesn't, get too disruptive. Yeah, that's just going out to bid now, and it's the water main that needs to be done first around Chestnut Street.
Yeah, I knew there was something, and I was like, "Ooh."
Yeah,
you do everything all at once. It makes it very.
No, that's a good flag. I'll definitely make sure.
There.
I'll bring it up at their next coordination meeting. But yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, actually, the DPW does try to coordinate all of that as much as possible to to just totally reduce the interruption. So they'll pick a street that might be on the. Again, this is not addressing your specific question, but in general, they'll take a look at their paving schedule, for example, and find out, is there drainage that has to be added to it? Is there other things that have to be done? Rather than going back at a subsequent period, let's all get all that stuff scheduled beforehand, and then we do the paving. So it's all done in coordination.
Yeah, and just so you know, in terms of our workflow, we obviously work and help to design these things, get the bid package, but who's ultimately releasing it is DPW. So there is a centralized source that's looking at this.
And although you would probably not think that it was very coordinated, but indeed it really is.
There's method to the madness.
Yeah.
Darlene?
Oh, go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry, Jess. If you were
That's
gonna add something
okay.
to that.
Yeah, I was just going to say we can absolutely follow up. It's really helpful to hear people's questions on just general projects that are going on in the city, because we can always help to work with you, Sharon Goldstein, to be able to have people join the meeting and give us a walk bridge update, because obviously there's a large economic community development impact on that. And it's not necessarily something that our committee's focused on in the past to any great detail, but the timeline of it is really important. And also the long-term implications or the long-term opportunities, I think, are something that the committee probably wants to talk about. And in addition, it also relates a lot to what Director Kleppin's going to talk about with planning and zoning as well. So I think all these things, the great thing about economic community development is it overlays and overlaps and complements so many of the other projects that are going on in the city. But part of that means that it's extra interesting for this group to be able to hear about all of those pieces and how they come together, especially with the timelines, because I think, make a really good point in the sense of the impact to the area and what that's going to look like, especially with different projects happening in similar timelines or overlapping. So we can definitely start to build a timeline, even from a city standpoint, on when these things are going to happen. And I think it would be really helpful for all of us.
I completely agree. I was just thinking the same thing when Jess brought it up, and Heather, when you brought up the point you brought up, especially because the walk bridge construction has really started in earnest. But Darlene had her hand up a long time ago, and I don't want to
Oh, that's okay.
I think
delay.
the whole, sorry, just to follow up quickly though, I guess my concern is being aware, like for fire and police and, some of the safety things, which streets are going to be blocked. If there's too many blocked, then people are kind of, on an island and aren't able to be as safe as we'd like them to be. So that's just why I was asking.
No, it's appreciated. Darlene?
Thank you, Chairman. Just want to give kudos to Brian. You have really gone out into the community more than I traditionally have known, because I worked at redevelopment under the other regime, and I understand. There was a lot of check the box meetings going on, and that's always been the standard, and you all have gone well above that. And so I appreciate that in earnest and with integrity and intention. So I appreciate all of that. I think we need development is happening, and over the next 4 years, we're going to have development in South Norwalk, right? Pretty much. And so it's all in one little square, whatever. I don't even know how big it is, but it is very small. And I think there is some benefit to really coordinating that, because it is a lot going on and it is very disruptive. And the part of South, and it's going on in what, a four block area of South Norwalk. So any information about the coordination of that is helpful. With one lane streets, it gets backed up really quickly, and then you end up going around, and so does everybody else. And we get it.
Till it
It's
floods.
development, right? We get it. But a timeline would be helpful, would be very helpful.
No problem.
And I would hope that most of the projects would be done before the school is open, because we don't want trucks and those sorts of things on the street while people are walking to work. Families are, walking to school, we're supposed to have safe routes to school. So that's a concern.
Barbara?
Yep,
Yeah,
Barbara.
just to add, or just to piggyback really on Jessica's comment about, it's been a while since there's been a walk bridge presentation to even the Public Works Committee, and so I think it's something that is we should be looking at, because it's really imminent now. And we know that they've been working in other parts in East Norwalk and other parts of the city, but all of this work is coming together, and it's imminent. So I think a presentation, and Jess, you might want to talk to Vanessa about you know, how's the best way to handle that? And, you know, and to address all these issues, you know, the road closures and things, and how it's going to affect people.
And to your point, Barbara, I think it should be a bigger meeting and not just the council. I think, or we can do a couple of them. I think we need to really do that with the community.
Yep.
We can also, maybe we can work with CONDOT, because they're of course the ones really managing the whole construction timeline. So Jess and Sabrina, and we can come together with a plan, because obviously that cuts across a number of different committees. And I think Darlene's right. I think that a community update on Walk Bridge construction is something that I think a lot of people would be very interested in.
Yeah, possibly even just a lot of public forums, I think is also a good idea. Like, you know, Darlene, you're saying it's got to be just a committee.
Sorry. One of the things that we did do last month is we actually hold a business development meeting for all the businesses in the city of Norwalk 4 times a year. And at that business meeting, we actually invited the Walk Bridge to the Walk Bridge organization. Connecticut Dot is working with WSP to do communications and community outreach. And so we invited them to the meeting to be able to present to all of the business owners and property owners that were there in the room. And there were probably about 100 people present, but it might make sense in addition to, you know, I'm hearing sort of what everyone is saying in the sense of it's a project that really impacts our city, but it's not necessarily a city-owned project, right? And I think that there's a difference there. And so, you know, one of the things that we can do is also invite DOT and also invite WSP to come and present to the Economic Community Development Committee as well, because there is the DPW piece that is coordinating with the DOT piece, but the DOT piece is really leading the charge on this. And I think that it's important that we remember that in the sense of what the city has ownership over, in sense of the project, and what the state has ownership over. Because I'm just cognizant of that, both having experience at the state level and having experience at the municipal level. I think we just want to be clear as to who owns what in the project.
Well, the other thing is, I don't know if there can be some kind of geofencing or, you know, letting people know, because the other thing is that you brought up like the school being built at the same time. And I think there's something going on Meadows Gardens too. There's a lot going on at the same time, so that if people need to get to work or if they need to access public transportation, if the buses are going down a different street, it'd be really nice to have a way that people can quick access information on a daily, hourly, you know, notification ability kind of thing. Or how about even like if you own a business, where else do you park?
I think those are all valid concerns, and I think that clearly, I think the message that's coming out of here is, I think, a future briefing with the Walk Bridge and everything that comes with it is something that we should absolutely coordinate and get into. And I'm glad that you are all saying this to all of us, and we can respond to that. Brian, I think you wanted to talk about Webster Street Lot 2.
Yeah, I have a couple other things I could go through real quick before that, if that works for you.
Yeah, of course. I thought that was the next thing. I thought I was teeing you up, but
you're good.
Take it away.
I just wanted it's a follow up to the residential programs. Then I'll get into that. Don't you worry. So in terms of the residential program that I was talking about, I just wanted to mention that we're actively working on a number of projects there. We have about 25 projects in the hopper. Applicants have been notified. We're actually really happy about that. We got a lot of interest and there's a lot of support for that program. So over the next year, we're going to be getting to them in batches. The other product that I wanted to mention is you may have all seen it, and hopefully it's not too disruptive, is the underground utility work that's going on over at 467 West Avenue. That's in support of the Pinnacle development project. That should be wrapping up in the next month here is what we're shooting for, a couple months. And then the vertical construction will go, and then we'll be repairing the streetscapes. That's part of a grant. We received $5 million in grants for that particular area that we're moving forward on. The other project I wanted to update you on is the Harbor Loop Trail. I know we've talked about this a number of times as part of this group. Thanks to the support of Senator Duff and the state delegation, we received $6 million in Urban Act funding to actually construct the improvements at 130 and 148 East Avenue. It's not actually on those properties, just in public right of way adjacent to. So we've started the design on that, so that you'll be hearing more about that in in months to come. We'll make sure to keep you posted on anything that comes in that regard. And then the other thing before I go to Webster Lot is the climate action plan. That is obviously it's led by the ad hoc sustainability committee, but I wanted to make you all aware that that's pending. We're hoping we're going to be giving that presentation in January, and there's going to be a lot of great work and exciting updates that are going to come out from that. And then finally, as Chairman Goldstein mentioned, the Webster Street lot, we are actively continuing our negotiations on that front. We've done a lot of work recently defining the remediation plan for that. If you recall, we received $2 million in grant funding from the state, $2 million in grant funding from EPA, working towards resolving a $5.5 million remediation price tag on that site. So we've been working with our environmental consultant to start the cleanup on that, and engage the state resources, really pre-development stuff in anticipation of the development that we've been talking about for a while. I do want to provide an update in that we've done a lot of public outreach. We went out to the community, I think 4 times. We did some general public outreach and also some tenant and business outreach direct with the developer Quarterra. Subsequent to the public outreach, we went back to the negotiating table with Quarterra, and we both mutually realized that they were not going to be in the position to sort of meet the community need that we had anticipated. Largely due to the adjacent property owner constraints. So we've actually moved forward negotiations with the second pre-qualified vendor, Spinnaker, on that project. They've been involved peripherally the entire time we've been working on this. A lot of the consortium that was represented with Spinnaker, it isn't just Spinnaker, it's also the adjacent property owners. In order to meet a lot of these community development objectives, like keeping the grocery store, making sure that we reach the density to accommodate affordable housing, all of these things became very challenging when a parcel was only relegated to the public parcel. So we feel that this is a step in the right direction. We are in active negotiations right now, so I would defer a comprehensive update in the next couple months here once I have a few more things finalized, but I wanted to make sure you guys heard that first from me. Rather than somewhere else. And my whole goal for this entire process is transparency, and we'll be keeping you posted on public outreach that's going to occur should we be able to reach the terms that are advantageous, obviously, to the city. And that's the first and foremost. And I think that this discussion leading towards this outcome is in that vein right now. So happy to answer any questions in that regard as well.
Well, if there aren't any questions now, I think, Brian, maybe we'll check back in maybe in the spring sometime. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
And maybe an update on the project. And if anyone has any questions in the meantime, obviously, I'm sure Brian would be happy to answer them. But I guess I will calendar. We'll figure out a time to get an update maybe sometime in the spring.
Very good. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you, Brian. All right. Last but not least, Steve Kleppen, our Director of Planning and Zoning. Thank you so much for waiting. And now the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I feel honored to go after Mr. Badoli, so it's a great pleasure for me tonight. I'll just walk through a few things that we have going on. So the zoning regulations rewrite is at the finish line. The Planning and Zoning Commission closed the public hearing last night. It's open for a written comment through 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. My email has not dinged in an hour, so I'm hoping the trickles have stopped and we can kind of move on from that phase. The commission is meeting next Wednesday and Thursday night to deliberate on the public comments and some of the other, correspondences and things that have come in over the last month or so since we sent out the referral comments and referral articles for everybody's review. I think that I'm pretty positive that they'll take action next week. Were 2 big thrusts of the comments from the latest public periods. One being concerned about the floodplain regulations, and the second one, a lot of concern about some recent amendments that came regarding the Manresa project. So we've gotten, some concern from some of the neighbors there, which is understandable considering that's something that is new. I think the key takeaway that people aren't quite grasping is it's not a plan for the property. All it is approving language that will allow them to submit a plan. What they'd like to do is kind of not, everybody, if you're not familiar with the project or the property, I should say, there's a lot of environmental issues on the site. There are a lot of wetlands on the site, so big portions of it can't be developed. So what they'd like to do is kind of do like what's called a conservation development on the property, which is kind of cluster the housing together. So it'll be mainly comprised of single family and then duplex style housing, but it'll be for sale units is what they're planning, with the vast majority of the property being open space. And some of it's not buildable anyway, so it sounds great, but some of the things that we've talked to them that we would like to see incorporated in would be a trail system around the entire perimeter of the property, so the public has access to that, with some areas where they have access to the water. We've talked to them about the idea of putting in a marina there, since there's a natural one that was built in as part of the prior operations of the facility. Since a large portion, particularly on the northern part of the property, is wetlands and actually has contamination beneath it, so you really can't do too much with it. We talked to them that we'd like to, at some point, maybe we'd like to try to get some grants to put like a boardwalk through there, because it's it's an active wetland area, so it'd be something the public could get access to and enhance the trail network into the city. And there's obviously things we have to talk to them in more detail about, traffic, and also infrastructure, because there's the causeway that goes out to the island, and that's going to potentially be underwater in the future at frequent intervals. So before we add a ton more housing out there, we really need to solve that issue, and they're aware of that. All in all, they won't be proceeding with anything for a minimum of 5 years, more likely 7+, because DOT is using that for staging as part of Walkbridge. So I think the way the language with the easement works with that is they basically have the 5 years, but it can be extended out. And everybody that's familiar with the DOT project knows, take their time frame and multiply it by a lot, and you'll see them down the road. So that's kind of where the zoning regulations stand. Assuming it passes next week, the regulations will be effective sometime in February, probably around the middle of the month. The consultant team will have to go back and make all the edits that the commission agrees to. We'll have to check everything to make sure they captured all the edits correctly. Then we'll publish it, print it, and publish the maps and so forth. So I think there's been, in terms of new development projects, kind of transitioning a little bit, I think there's been a lot of people waiting to see what we do with the new regulations, see what ultimately passes, and to see whether it's more beneficial for them to work under the existing code, or would it be better for them to wait till the new code's effective and then work off those regulations. So I think you'll see some transition projects come in the short term, but then I think overall, for the main areas, like you were just talking about with Brian, South Norwalk, West Ave, Wall Street, particularly South Norwalk, I don't think there's really many changes to the regulations that are beneficial from a development standpoint, because the bulk and the height standards and the density really don't change at all. The one area the commission is looking at is loosening up the parking regulations. We got a lot of public comment about loosening those standards up, particularly around the transit areas, because the parking is very expensive to build. Sometimes surface space can be around 15, maybe more, 15,000 or more per space, and structured parking runs around 35 or plus, depending on if it's underground or not, per space. So when you have a lot of parking requirements, that tends to increase the development costs, which causes the rents to go higher. So we're looking at those things and trying to, right size some of those standards that we have now. Darlene, do you have a question?
Yeah, I had a couple before you mentioned this about loosening up the parking. What does that mean exactly?
So we're looking at a couple different things. So right now, the parking standards are all formulas and ratios. So for example, if you're doing like a multifamily residential building or a mixed use type of building, the base standard is you have to provide 1.3 parking spaces for every unit of housing you provide.
Mhm.
That can drop right now with the current code down to 1 space per unit, based on some affordable housing formulas that we have put into the regulations. there are some abilities to lower that even further through some other bonuses and credits that we've put in. And the commission is, you know, particularly on the Sono station, and I'd say that's the primary one in terms of where they're thinking about the broadest reductions. So they're looking at some different formulas around that.
Okay. So that doesn't impact people parking on the street, does it? I mean, is that what that? There's nowhere to park now. When you say parking, that just scares me because we're having
Parking, yeah, it would be related to on private property.
just
So,
private property.
Yeah. So the street parking is still regulated by the city or you know, whoever's handling that. So whatever requirements in terms of times for meters and so forth, that doesn't change at all.
Okay.
So the next, you know, we've got a lot of other things on kind of like the planning front that we're working on. Brian kind of was talking about the affordable housing plan. So my group's taking the lead on that effort. We have a consultant firm, AKRF, that is working on that. If you were at the Wall Street event the other day, some of my staff was out there talking to the public, getting feedback in person. One really great thing that this consultant team is doing is they're doing a lot of in-person things, working at like pop-up events and putting up a booth there and just trying to, you know, I've done these things before. It's a little different process if you're not used to doing it from a staff perspective, because you have to really get out there and kind of be a salesperson to say, hey, come talk to me. And it's not always easy if someone's out there with their kids or their grandkids, and you know how that's like if they want to go in 6 directions and you have somebody asking them 5 questions about housing, it might not be at the top of your list. So, but it's good feedback, and it's a great way to get input from folks you normally don't get at the traditional public hearings or public meetings, where, you know, 60-70% of the crowd are the same people that you hear from all the time. And then maybe you get some outliers, but so it's a good way to get out into the public and reach those folks. That plan should hopefully be completed sometime mid-late 2024. And I think that will feed into recommendations about some of the things you were just talking about in terms of the different levels of affordability that are required. The planning and zoning regulations really deal with that workforce level, which is meant to mimic the Connecticut General Statutes 8-30G requirements. So that's what that program does. The affordable housing plan is really meant to say, all right, you have all these different demographic groups, all these groups of differing needs, and inventorying what all those are, and then helping us come up with programs and regulations that address those shortfalls and strategies to help achieve those things. Darlene?
I'm sorry, this might be a little off. So when we put, you know, the 10% affordable, I'm just asking this question, into these developments, what's the lifespan of them? Are they forever affordable units now?
Yeah,
We don't have any now that expire, right? That whatever is there is there.
Yeah, when the program was first started, there were a few units that had expired recently, but it was a small amount. But everything that we approve now is in perpetuity. Some communities, the way the statute reads, to you know, you might hear that Norwalk has 14% affordable units. That's a misnomer. Norwalk has about 14% of its housing stock that complies with that statute, which is the 830G statute. That doesn't mean they're necessarily affordable units, because it's really targeted for workforce housing. So it's like your police, firefighters, and those folks. Some of the statute allows to get points towards that number. Those units are allowed to sunset at a certain point. Some of the surrounding communities that have a very low percent, like in the 2 to 4% range, some of those units will sunset. So they benefit them in the short terms of counting towards their 830G number, but it's not really doing a lot to solve the long-term affordability problem, because I don't think 30 years from now, we're not going to have an affordability problem. I don't see how it's going to go away. So what we're hoping to do is, right now we do 10%. There's 2 levers. One's at 80% of state median income, or we have another lever at 60% state median income. The Planning and Zoning Commission was talking about, should we do a different percent? Should we do 15%, 20%? But that's what the study will tell us. It's like, we'll look at those numbers. Is it the right percentage? Are we hitting the right demographics and hitting people who actually need the help?
So I'm happy to hear that because we've been talking about that. I know that I've been saying that. How do we increase the percentage? So you're saying there is an opportunity to do that.
Yes, yeah, and very interesting enough, when the South Norwalk TOD plan was approved in 2019, that was a hot topic. And some of the folks that were working in the affordable housing arena at that point in time, their opinion was that the 10% wasn't the problem. It was the affordability level that 80% was the problem. So it was like the number wasn't the issue, but it was like you're really not helping the people that really need the help the most. My personal opinion is zoning is not going to be able to solve all these problems. It's going to take a myriad of different things. You know, Adam's doing such great work with the housing authority, redeveloping sites and adding more units, and, you know, working with Open Doors, who we've been working with more often now on some projects, and they're partnering with us on the affordable housing plan. It's going to take a complete, you know, local, state, federal plan to really address all the different needs that we have.
And land.
Yeah, and if you can come up with some more land for all the uses and all the things that people want, that would be great. That would be.
I got a perfect one at the corner of South Main and Woodward Avenue.
South Main.
Got a big tarp over it.
No comment, please, on that
I'm
one.
sorry. Thank you.
Sure. So we just released, and Jessica's been working with Amelia and my staff on a strategic management plan for the harbor. That's kind of following up on the industrial waterfront study, and it's really kind of a management tool, and Jessica can definitely explain it much better than I can, but that RFP, I think, just went out the last couple of days, so we're starting to publicize that. So we'll be working on that. We have capital funds from last year to look at the Norden site. It really I'm thinking of it more from an economic development standpoint, considering all the vehicular restraints associated with that property. We were hoping there was going to be an application that actually took the whole building and put something in there that the neighbors would not object to, but that every time I think that's going to happen, it falls apart. So I'm at the point now where I don't think I can count on that actually happening anymore. So we're going to try to take a little bit more of a proactive approach on how the site could be better utilized, brought back into functionality, help with the tax base, but also be very cognizant about traffic impacts, particularly truck traffic impacts, considering the tight road network over there. We have a whole bunch of different planning work going on and really just getting started. Alexis Carachetti, who's not with me tonight, but has gotten, you probably saw some grants that she got last year. She just was awarded, well, I should say the city was just awarded with 2 grants earlier this week. One was about $500,000, which was a sustainability related infrastructure grant. So Alexis and Vanessa Valadares are going to be working hand in hand on putting that together. There's a lot of federal funds out there and state funds for resilience work. And our office is taking, a big focus on coastal impacts, how that relates to that, and then how that relates to vulnerable communities. You may have seen what we were working on related to the Circa study that's just kind of wrapping up now. We're actually going out hopefully next month for an RFP on raising the intersection of Concord and Day Street to bring that out of the above the flood level. So the idea being it's a safe access route. So if there is a flood, that intersection is higher, kind of what they did at Raymond and Day when they developed not Washington Village, but Soundview Landing. They raised that intersection so there was dry access route through the park and out from the development. So that's kind of how you can build in the flood zone. So it's not like a taboo kind of thing. So we're looking at that, working with TMP and DPW on that. So we'll be hopefully getting that out for kind of a design phase later this, I should say in about a month or so. Trying to think what else is going on. There's a couple of big projects that are going to be in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission soon. The first phase of the BLT project at North 7, that was approved about 1.5 years ago, kind of a master plan concept for that. And now they're have their plans in, and they're hopefully will get an approval either January or February so they can start construction on the first phase. All other phases of that project are contingent on road improvements, with the first significant piece of road improvement being replacement of the Glover Avenue Bridge and the completion of the Merritt 7 interchanges. And I think those projects have been talked about since longer than I've been doing planning, so we'll see when those get done. Hopefully they get start work in 2025. The last phase of that project can't begin until road work is planned and approved up at the Glover Ave, Grist Mill, Main Ave intersection, which you know all have been on it at one point in time during rush hour, which is a complete point of gridlock at times. So we've kind of that was approved, like, all right, we'll let you do phase one now because you have development there and they generated a certain percentage of traffic. Phase two, we're not letting you do until these road improvements are done at the southern end, and phase three can't kick off until you do the improvements at the northern end. So that's kind of how we structured that. There's, you know, we're working with Brian's team off and on when projects come in South Norwalk, West Ave, Wall Street. So there's a bunch of different things going on. I have to get the Wall Street Place permits out of the door, I'm told, by Monday, and I will hopefully get that done tomorrow. So that one will hopefully start construction in the near term. The One Cemetery Street project in East Norwalk is that, you know, they're working on the demo phase now, and they should be starting construction in the spring. There's a lot of significant DOT roadwork projects in the East Avenue corridor. So they're trying to tee up their roadway improvements with the DOT improvements, which should start to help with some of the circulation issues in there. It won't all be fixed until the new East Ave bridge is done. And then ultimately whatever the state can do at exit 16 to kind of solve that quagmire. So that's, I think, kind of a high level overview. Hopefully I did not miss anything. If you have questions, happy to take them. But if you have questions at any time, I think I've talked with most of you guys already, so you know where I am. I'm always around.
I have a question. Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, Heather, go for
ahead,
it.
Heather, go ahead.
I had a question. I know years ago, I don't know, when the BLT thing happened, they were gonna continue, they were gonna do bike, I don't know, to get across or under Grist Mill. What's going on with that? Is that?
That's the last phase piece of the NRVT, and I don't know what the actual status. I know that BLT has made the improvements on their property up to the end. Where the last phase goes, I'm not positive where that stands. I'm sorry.
So they can complete all the phases before doing that, really?
Yeah, the North 7 project, which is on the west side of Glover Ave, there's actually some new trails that are going to come in as spur trails off of the NRVT. And there's like a park that's going to be like between 2 and 3 acres that they're going to build that will be open to the public as well.
Yeah, I guess my question is mostly the connectivity between, I don't know, from BLT to any kind of, I don't know, where Walmart is or something. They
Yeah, I would,
pull
that would be a
up, or
Jim
iPark.
Travers or Garrett question.
And by the way, just I was going to mention at the end of the meeting, but since we didn't want to do every single department in this meeting because we knew there was a lot to cover. So TMP and Building Code Enforcement are going to do their updates at our next meeting. Any other questions?
I guess my whole
Oh.
thing was like, I don't know if there's any requirement that they do it in order to do another phase, you know, because no, what's the chance they just walk away without having done it appropriately? I don't know.
Yeah, my understanding is that the development piece that's called the curb, which is the like kind of funky looking orange that are up
Apartments,
there.
yeah.
Yeah, I didn't approve that, so that's not me. That one, I think they met their obligations in terms of improvements related to the NRVT.
Okay. I just have some history, you know, some experience with Harbor Point in Stamford. I know that they didn't follow through some of the things that they had promised.
Yeah, so the way we wrote the language in the approval for the new development that hasn't started yet, we were really specific in how we laid it out because we didn't want there to be any questions about what they could or couldn't do. That one has very specific design standards too. So we have an outside third-party architect that's been reviewing all their plan submittals, trying to make sure, trying to get a different aesthetic is one thing we're trying to do.
Sorry, thanks.
And then just one note towards with like the 10% and workforce and affordable, that 10% is really not the goal. If you look at the language and like all of the like the statutes and everything, it's really like the minimum. So it's not that we're aiming for 10%. I know a lot of our neighboring towns and cities kind of use that as the goal. But that's really like the bare minimum. And so I think that's the focus with, even with raising it, it's really just the minimum that that we really should be hitting.
Yeah, when that whole 830G statutory language was put together, that I think 10% was a round number. I don't think it was based off of a need, which that's what we're trying to do with the affordable housing studies, actually come up with what our needs are, because I don't think anybody knows. And none, it's obvious that 10% for, is not meeting the need in specific cohorts right now.
I think we know the need, it's just getting there. That is the real issue. But I was thinking though, when you were talking about the zoning rewrite, and I know you said it's been a long time since, if they were ever updated. I mean, I don't know how many years it's been, Steve. And so is there conversation too, is this a fluid document with all this development going on? Have you all talked about if the need arises to make some changes, that you're able to do that? Like, this is not going to be a 20-year zoning rewrite while the city is, developing.
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a good lead in for me, actually. So yeah, so the last time the city did a comprehensive redo was 30 plus years ago, which is just insane. So the reason if anybody's had, I know Josh has had some firsthand experience looking at the regulations. The way they're put together now is it's pretty clear. When I got here, I was from a much smaller community, but it was a very structured document. It was very clear in looking at these that everything, all the changes that were made, and there were a lot of changes made, several a year. Every one of those changes was made in response to somebody wanting to do something. So if someone had an idea or a project, they would come in and they'd have to rewrite some portion of the code to fit their project. And doesn't necessarily mean that project was a bad project. It just means that the city had no plan on what they wanted to see and where. So what we did was, when we adopted the citywide plan, we said, here's where we want development and why we want it in these locations. And so this new zoning hopefully is reflective of that. The big, kerfuffle when we proposed a lot of the upzoning was, in my mind, I think 20, 30 years from now, I think it's going to come full circle back to that at some point in time, just based on the housing need and what we proposed. And, the funny thing is, listening to a lot of the testimony now, even people that are opposed to a lot of the housing, they're actually making our arguments for us with a lot of their testimony about, why we're adding housing. Because to your point, Darlene, there's no land. So how do we get more housing if there's no land? You have very little options. You either can build dense housing, which people in some facets don't like the dense housing, or you can allow softer zoning where you allow 2 families and maybe smaller multifamilies in areas that were traditionally single or 2 families. So that there's not a lot of other tools available in that regard. So you have to try to be flexible there. So the way we laid out the zoning boundaries in particular is they can expand over time as the city's needs grow. If the city's population continues to grow, and, just for public edification, we don't have targets on growth. I mean, it would 95,000 versus 100,000 makes, to me, there's no difference between the two. Is there a level of development where the city's infrastructure can't handle that anymore? I think there's been obvious testimony from different people involved, whether it's WPCA, DPW, that, we're not at that threshold. We haven't reached any of that. The schools haven't reached capacity. Police haven't been overtaxed. People complain about the road networks, but there's lots of facets that go into that conversation. So our idea is that as the city grows, we can expand the zoning boundaries. We wanted to reset all the zoning boundaries to right size them and fix them and align them correctly. Try to, like we did with the industrial zone study, we tried to figure out where do we, here's where we have our industrial zone land now. We want to try to reduce conflicts with residential neighborhoods, and then where there are uses that are not necessarily inappropriate and in keeping with what's going on in the surrounding area, we want to phase those out over time and get uses in there that are, not causing noise, odor, dust, pollution, things that are upsetting to the neighborhood, but hopefully are things that can be job generators over time. And that might not occur for 40 years, but it's important that we don't eliminate all that land, or we'll never have an opportunity to put businesses back in. So it's a really tricky formula, especially when you're adding in, like Brian was talking about, affordable housing and gentrification. It's a really complex puzzle that we don't ever get 100% correct. So that's why we're always constantly tweaking things. After my long-winded kind of diatribe, to get back to your specific question, we're already talking about with the Planning and Zoning Commission, 6 months after adoption, we're going to probably have, they'll start looking at things again, and we're probably going to have like just a public comment hearing where we're going to get people's thoughts on what they've experienced to date. And I think we'll probably, if we don't do that at 6, we'll definitely do it at 12 months in, maybe 18 months in. It's going to evolve. The document itself is not going to be perfect. There's going to be problems in it. There's going to be things that don't work or make sense that we're going to have to fix. Zoning is very gray. It's not a perfect science. It never will be. It's always going to have to get looked at, fixed, and evolved. Just think about what's happened in the last 5. Nobody forecast COVID, and then there was a trend towards work from home that was starting to happen a little bit, but COVID completely blew that out of the water. So now we're dealing with vacant office space that we never thought we would have to deal with. How do we evolve from that? So that everything is changing rapidly. So to me, that's why I have a great young staff who kind of kicks me in the shin every time, hey, we got to do this, we got to think about that. And, we don't sit around and rest on our laurels. We're always kind of digging for things to think about and work on. So that's what makes the job fun for me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I know it's been like 90 minutes. The idea of this is to just give everyone sort of a broad overview, and Steve, Brian, and Sabrina, you guys have done a really excellent job with that tonight. Does anyone have anything before I ask for a certain motion? All right, who wants to make it?
Motion to adjourn.
Happy holidays, everyone.
All in favor?
Holidays.
Happy holidays. See you guys back in January.
Yep.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Or
Thank you,
tomorrow, if
everybody.
you're in every committee now.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, really.
We'll be seeing Heather.
Couple hours.
Take
My
care.
4th meeting today, but that's
Oh,
okay.
God, Heather.
Yeah.
All right, bye.
Bye.
One was a real meeting.
The other 3 were, yes. This is included. All right, bye.